Alright, today I'm going to do one of the greatest mods for racing. It's going to be one of the best mods. What we're going to do is we're going to make the steering ratio much quicker on my Civic. And basically, this is how it works. My manual steering has the slowest ratio. So you're going to have to turn your hands more just to get a small amount of turn on the wheel itself. Steering quickness can be determined by the steering ratio, the certain amount of degrees input, and it will give you a certain amount degree output. Or you can determine it by the lock to lock, which is LTL. Lock to lock is when you turn your wheel all the way to one side, and then you turn it all the way to the other side, and how much turns it takes to get from one end to the other end on your steering wheel. And basically, there's 3 levels. There's a 4.0. That's the slowest level, and that's one equipped with manual steering racks for the EKs. I'm pretty sure EG is similar to 4.0 too. So 4.0, and the next level up is 3.6, which is faster. This only takes 3.6 turns, and that means the ratio is lower, making it faster steering. So 3.6 is equipped with the EK with power steering, which is like the EX model, especially in the Civic Si. They have the EX and some LXs. They have the power steering, which is a faster steering. And then the next level up is the 2.98, and that comes in the Integras. All the Integras from 1994 to 2001 have the same steering ratio. So don't waste your money getting a Type R steering rack, because it will be the same exact ratio. It was even on the official Honda Spec website. It's 16.1 to 1. That's the ratio. 16.1 to 1 on the Integras, and that is a 2.98 lock to lock. That's very fast compared to the 4.0. So that's what we're gonna do today. Because when I race, the biggest weakness of my car when I race is I shuffle my hands way too much because my steering is so freaking slow. And now it's time to change that. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. If you have a manual steering rack like I do, EK, possibly you're gonna have a manual steering rack in America. So you need a 1996 to 2000 Honda Civic power steering rack. It is a different size. It's bigger because it's power steering, and it's just a different internals. And so basically, you're gonna need a power steering Civic rack, and you're gonna need an Integra power steering pinion. Okay, the pinion is not the entire rack. It's just the input where from the firewall into the steering rack. It's all silver, and it's just connects from the steering column into the steering rack itself. It's the pinion gears, and the rack is just a elongated piece. Basically, you can get the entire rack you want, but we just want the pinion gears. People usually get both the racks. Okay, so you cannot put a Integra pinion gear into a manual steering Civic's rack because the parts are not interchangeable. That's why you have to get a power steering Civic rack, because the parts for those are interchangeable. So we're gonna jump 2 steps. We're gonna upgrade it 2 levels. So that's a major significant difference from my car to the Integra's rack. If you have power steering, you can on your Civic already. If you have like an EX or an SI, you can upgrade to Integra. All you need to do is get the Integra pinion. But another crucial item you need is the U-joint. The U-joint is the coupler that connects the steering column into the pinion, and that's where it goes through right through the firewall. That is the coupler that you need. You have to get it if you're going from manual to power steering, because the power steering shaft on the pinion, it is a larger diameter, so you need it. If you have a power steering Civic and you're going from Integra power steering, you do not need that U-joint coupler because they use the same one. But if you're going from manual to power, you do need get it from a junkyard, or just make sure whoever you're getting it from gives you that coupler. I bought my power steering Civic rack from Craigslist, and it was so good. It was only $45, and usually these things go for $80 for what I got. He gave me the entire steering rack, power steering Civic rack, and he gave me the coupler too. So it was perfect. I bought my Integra pinion from the junkyard yesterday, for only $25. I only took the pinion, so I took it apart from the rack, and I just took it with me, and they said it was $25. And when you're doing this, I highly recommend you changing out, getting new bushings. There's the rack has one major circular bushing, I'll show you later, and it has 4 smaller bushings, and the 4s are in pairs, so it's 2 pairs like that, and then it has one huge circular bushing, so 5 bushings total for the steering rack. I got mine on the internet, energy suspension, which is really good, and so I got for power steering. And I also recommend you getting new inner tie rods and outer tie rods. Since I am keeping mine manual steering, what we're going to do is we're going to make the power steering Civic rack into a manual steering rack. You can keep the power steering on the power steering Civic rack if you want. You don't have to make it manual. It'll be easier too because it's less work. But since I really want the manual, I want that raw feeling, that just direct, just plain old-fashioned raw feeling, and less stress on the pulley. I'm gonna stick to manual. I've been used to it. I don't have a problem with manual. It's just for parking purposes anyway, so I don't really care about it. So I'm gonna show you the proper way of depowering your power steering rack also. Depowering, well, also known as gutting out your power steering, is different from looping your power steering. Looping is when you don't even do anything to the internals. You just loop the power steering fluid lines together so that so the steering can be bearable without the power steering pump. But my method is the proper way. You're going to remove every power steering feature component from the power steering rack to make it a manual rack. And that's what we're going to do today. A lot of people really want to do this back then, especially if you're racing, autocrossing, circuit racing. If you're drag racing, this mod won't even do anything to you, so it's up to you. But if you're doing like other things, a lot of turns, circuit racing, and autocrossing, you really need this mod. It's amazing. So the way it works is that all 3 of the racks I mentioned, they all have the same teeth, the exact same teeth pattern on the rack itself. The only difference between 3 is the pinion gear. The pinion gear are all different. The lowest level, which is the manual steering rack for the Civic, it's 7 teeth. The power steering Civic is 8 teeth, and the Integra is 9 teeth, and that's where the ratios differ, just because of pinion gear. It's very simple. A lot of people didn't know about it back then, but then someone has broken it down and he discovered it, and that's what we're going to do. The reason why the manual steering rack, like especially in the EG and the earlier Integras, and obviously the EK manual steering rack, the reason why they have a slower turning ratio is because you gotta think that a human being is turning the steering wheel, and it's gonna be tough on the human. So Honda made it so it's easier. The less teeth you have on the pinion gear, the easier the effort is, but the slower the steering. So it's a little bit of compromise, if you understand what I'm saying. The more teeth you have on the pinion gear, the faster the turn is, but it takes more effort to turn it. And the reason why Honda gave power steering cars, they granted it a faster steering is because it was able to, because the driver was assisted with the power steering mechanisms. So the power steering would greatly assist the effort. So they were able to lower the LTL. So like if you think about the NSX, the manual steering was also 4.0, a little bit over 4.0 I think. And then you got the power steering NSX, it got like around 3.6, so it got lower. So that's why Honda made it slower, because it was just purely the driver, the human being behind the steering wheel, try to make it easier for them to turn the wheel. And that's why the power steerings are much lower, and that's why today almost every car is power steering. And you'll see cars today about 2.6 LTL, like the modern Civics and such. Here's the Integra valve body. Because these bolts were so stubborn, I wasn't able to take them out with an open end wrench. So what I did was I straightened out the lines, and then I put in a deep socket, Now I use an impact wrench and then just impact it out. You don't have to use impact, but as long as you have a ratchet, a long socket, it makes it a lot easier if you can't open it up with the open end wrench. You see the 4 lines coming out of it? You're gonna remove the 4 lines. What you wanna do is get a cutting tool, like a Dremel or something, and cut the lines so you just have the bolt. So do that to all 4 of them. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put JB Weld and cover the opening, and so you can put it back in so it's completely sealed. There's other ways to seal the hole too. To me, I'm just gonna use the JB Weld. This is my power steering Civic rack, and what you wanna do is because these bolts, for me, they're kind of stubborn. I can't take it off with an open wrench. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the lines here with a Dremel tool, and cut the other line right here, and then remove the line and get my impact and impact the bolts out. And then just like the injector valve body, I'm gonna JB Weld the openings of the bolt and reuse them later to seal it up. Okay, it's just the bolts. I removed the lines already. This is what it looks like. Alright, I just finished cleaning and scrubbing all 6 of the bolts with alcohol and a brush. So I'm now going to JB Weld the opening. I left it upside down with the JB Weld facing downwards so that it dries out evenly towards the head. And obviously, when I wake up, it's going to stick to the paper. But I chose this paper for a reason, so I can just rip it right off. I mean, the paper will still be stuck on there, but that's okay, it's just paper. I'm going to go ahead, before I clean it, remove this entire valve body from the Civic power steering, because we're swapping this entire thing out for this Integra. So I'm going to remove it. There's 2 screws here, 2 bolts, one right there, one right there. Just take it out and then pull it out, that's it. There you go. This is the entire Civic pinion, power steering Civic pinion, and these are all the lines that I cut off already, and just remove the whole thing. And this is what you're gonna have. Now I'm gonna take off the boot, remove the inner tie rods because I bought new ones. I'm gonna clean everything after that. Now you're going to take off all the bushings. Here are all the old bushings, the big one, the 2 pairs, and you need to keep these. These goes inside the 2 smaller bushings. The next step is to take this nut off, but before that I'm going to go ahead and just degrease the entire rack and clean it off. Make it clean. I'm going to do this outside. Alright, after I cleaned it, I need to go to the store and get a socket that will fit this huge nut. And while I'm going to the store, before I go, I'm going to spray it with PB Blaster. This will help break the nut loose easier, so it can soak in. So I'm going to go spray it on and go to the store, and by the time I come back, it should be soaked in long enough. Here's the rack gear removed from the housing. This is the toughest part of the build, removing this rack gear, because you see this old ring right here, this rubber ring, that seals up all the air, and whenever you hammer it through here, you stick a hammer, keep hammering it through there, a lot of air is built up in here and a lot of pressure that wants the rack gear to go that way again. So you gotta keep doing it, force it down and pop it out. It's really difficult. That's the hardest part right here. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a Dremel tool or any cutting tool you have and cut this ring off. Clean the insides. I already watered the insides. And then I'm gonna get paper towels. I'm gonna clean it through. And I'm gonna degrease the whole rack shaft. I'm gonna brush the crevices off and make it clean. Basically, you're gonna clean everything out. Remove this ring, and you're gonna keep this. Okay, keep that. You're gonna put it back together. This metal ring right here is the power component. If we remove that, the entire power steering system is disabled, all because of this ring. This is how you really depower a power steering rack. Remove this piece. See how it's broken in half? One on each side. I cut on one side, and the other side I cut the other side. And take this out. You don't need this anymore. Throw it away. It should look like this. Now the shaft has been completely depowered. If you look at the end of the rack housing, you'll see an indent from the factory. They put an indent in it so it locks the nut in place. This is the nut that goes at the end of it. So when it does that, you try to remove it, it strips the entire thread off. This happens to almost everyone who does this build. So basically what you're gonna do is try to force it back in, twist it back in with the impact, and if it doesn't come in, then round off all the threads so that it slips in, and then you're gonna weld the edges together. You're gonna weld the nut into the housing. I'm gonna use JB Weld just like I did before. Here are the three pieces after they've been taken apart, cleaned. Now we're gonna put stuff together, and that should be it. So everything's all clean and ready to go. We're gonna use all-purpose grease. I use Permatex, the brand. So I'm gonna grease up all this stuff, this entire shaft right here, especially the teeth. I'm gonna grease this area, grease this area, grease every shaft area, and grease the insides of the tube and the inside walls. So grease all of it and then put it together. Here's my new steering rack bushings, energy suspension. Here's the bushings. We're gonna put it back onto the rack. We're gonna grease the insides and outsides of the bushings with lithium grease. Energy suspension is polyurethane. They tell you to use lithium grease around on it. And put it back together. Remember, this is the power steering for the Civic, and the bushings are all in. This is the pinion from the Integra. Make sure you don't put back the power steering from the Civic. That would suck. So make sure it's Integra and the Civic rack. This is what it should look like. Now you're gonna put back the bolts that are welded, that usually have pipeline for the power steering fluid. You're gonna put those bolts back. Here's one, and there's 4 on here. This is what the bolts look like when they're welded at the opening. It looks perfect. A little piece of paper is still stuck on there, but it's okay. Now you're gonna put it all back. I'm gonna put some ultra gray gasket maker, silicone gasket maker on the edges where it mates the valve body. Alright, now you're gonna bolt down the valve body into the rack. The two bolts are there, now secure it. Now you're gonna put the cap on. Perfect. This is it. This is what your new modified power steering rack should look like. 2.98 LTL, 16.1:1 ratio. Civic rack with the Integra pinion. This is it. Perfect. Now just put it back in the car. If you have the boot for the valve body, you can put it in now. Mine, I got it from Integra, which will fit this valve body. Because the Integra, it's oriented a different position. Like these two bolts right here, on the Integra, it's actually like more vertical, like right here. So the boot will not be straight on the Civic. So what I'm doing is gonna trim the end of the boot to make it fit nicely. Here's the JB weld at the end of the huge nut, 36mm nut. Even though the bolt threaded in pretty nicely, I just welded it like other people did, just to be safe. This right here is the guide bolt. This is used to adjust the play in the stiffness in the steering rack. It puts tension on the rack gear and it makes it stiff. So if you have play in your steering rack, this is the most likely to cause, because you should be adjusted periodically. It states so in the service manual, but there's 3 pieces for that. Just put it back in reverse order. The spring goes first. I made markings just in case I want to see where it was like before. This is the lock nut. You need a special tool. You can make your own tool, but it's really difficult to get in the crevice to adjust this from inside the car. Basically, to adjust this comes off. You take this off, then counterclockwise will loosen it, which means you get a little bit more play. And if you go clockwise, tightening it, you'll reduce the play and the steering will be a little bit more stiff. So choose the right settings you want and put the lock nut back in and just tighten it nicely. Alright, the new steering rack is amazing. It will help you so much. I love it. You're going to need to get alignment because your alignment is totally off because you have no idea what the alignment was before and how you were doing it. I have a tutorial on how to replace the steering rack, so use that other tutorial if you need help removing the car steering rack or installing one or replacing it, whatever. I have a video for that. I'll link it in, and that's it. You're good to go. Enjoy the new steering rack. One of the best mods ever. This is one of my favorite.